Imagine it. Europe lay under the icy grip. On the northern plains, massive herds of herbivores roamed, while cave lions and hyenas squabbled over their spoils. In the south, bears and ibexes watched from the rocky heights. The Neanderthals had long observed this world, their lives as ancient as the mountains themselves. Pardon my poetic thinking. But change was on the horizon. Newcomers arrived, slandered, with dark skin, wielding tools with a finesse that the Neanderthals had never known. These people crafted spears with levers and adorned themselves with hides and beads of shell and ivory. Little did the Neanderthals know their days were numbered, as these innovative migrants would soon reshape the landscape of human existence. I shall talk about Aurignacian, Gravettian, Magdalenian, and Sauterian cultures in 4 separate episodes. I want to give a shout out to North02. If you want to know more about Aurignacian culture, watch his video on his YouTube channel. The link is provided. In this episode, I will talk about Aurignacian culture from 43,000 to 26,000 years ago. Let's start with the name. In 1852, Jean-Baptiste Bonmasson found 17 skeletons in the cave near Aurignac. The local mayor quickly had them reburied to avoid scandal, and the bones vanished. Later excavation in the same cave revealed advanced tools and remains of mammoths and cave bears. Before mid-1800s and Darwin, we saw the world through a biblical lens. As the theory of evolution gained undisputed evidence for its validity, we learned that different species once walked the earth. As the Neanderthal bones and the Darwin's origin of species shook things up, our understanding of the world shifted dramatically, challenging long-held beliefs and opened the door to a new wave of life's origins and very ancient history of our planet. Not just 4,000 years or so. Well, around the world, people are still trying to prove that Abrahamic religions are right, that God's word is literal, not symbolic, and that there was no evolution. Before moving into Europe, Homo sapiens showed no Neanderthal traits. A 40,000 to 50,000 year old kid from what is now Lebanon had a chin, a feature unique to modern humans, something Neanderthals never had. His face was lacking the heavy brow ridge, but when these populations moved into Europe, the picture changed. These skulls were like ours, but with Neanderthal signatures, large faces, big teeth, and in some cases, elongated back of the head. It is obvious that we mixed, Neanderthals and we. Even today, we have features that are from the Neanderthals: red hair, freckles, paler skin. Yes, the first Homo sapiens in Europe had much darker skin. Maybe not as the modern sub-Saharan Africans, but pretty close. These populations eventually vanished, replaced by new waves of modern humans. Some believe that the high level of Neanderthal DNA may have been their downfall, holding them back as the world kept moving forward. I read much about the DNA, but it is too scientific. This podcast is about art. I want to paint you a picture of Ice Age Europe at the time, 43 to 26,000 years ago. During the Aurignacian, Europe was cold, dry, and wide open. The land was mostly grassland. It's called the Mammoth Steppe. One time it was the largest biome on Earth. It was a harsh, empty place, barren in winter, but in warmer months, grassland stretched out to the horizon, from modern-day France all the way to Siberia. Aurignacian people roamed these lands, but they avoided the glaciers on the north. For about 70,000 years, glaciers ruled over Alps, Scandinavia, and much of the northern Europe. When the climate warmed, the ice retreated, leaving behind more land for the taking, even where the seas now lie, places like Doggerland and English Channel. Still, most of the land was sparsely populated, with around 5,000 people spread across Europe and Asia. Some studies say it could be as low as 1,500 people. Think about it. You could walk for days and never see a single soul, just an endless, unmarked land, untouched by humans. What that tells you about the others that you meet? If you have listened to our dialogue number 21 with Genevieve von Petzninger, you will remember there were places where people met. How often? We don't know. I'm just trying to paint you a picture how empty Europe and Asia were at the time. However, the animals were everywhere. Reindeer, bison, woolly mammoth, all grazing in herds. Cave lions, hyenas, and wolves tracked their movements, waiting for their moment. Down south, the scene was different. Mountains, a warmer climate, more trees. Here, ibex and boars roamed while leopards and jaguars stalked in the shadows. It was a brutal world, full of life but hostile. The Aurignacians had to rely on what wits and the tools just to make it through another day. I mean, imagine living in that kind of environment. What kind of a chance do we have against claws and power of lions and bears? What are we without technology and ability to think? Us, Denisovans, Neanderthals, we are nothing without our creativity and ability to plan. We are our technology, and making tool, that's art. Prove me wrong. So, stone tools. That was the heart of it. You look at those Aurignacian people, hard, lean, scraping by in a world of ice, dust, and empty space. They weren't just surviving, they were innovative, crafting blades out of rocks. They didn't know, but the art of stone tool making stretched back millions of years. The Upper Paleolithic was about blades, thin and sharp, struck off a core of a stone. A long blade could be used as a knife or a spear. Simple and efficient, no waste. They made tiny flakes called microlites, stone just chipped off, no bigger than a fingernail. These little things were magic. You can make anything with them. Knives, darts, even composite tools. Slip one into the piece of wood, you got a knife. If it gets dull, replace it. Some of these people were using bone or ivory as a spear tips, lined with these sharp flakes around it. These people were hunters, no questions about that, and they had to be. The land was tough. The animals were even tougher. But the real genius, these microlights were light. You can carry a bunch of them and knock a few off whenever you need something sharp. They were easy to make too, nothing like these big bifacial blades that took forever to craft. The Aurignacian were some of the first people to figure out how to really use bone and antler, making spears and points out of the very animals they hunted. Reindeer shed antlers by the dozen, and these people used every piece. They were carving out everything, tools, weapons, even art. Their bone points were special too. In the western part of Europe, they had these long, narrow, one-split bases. Instead of notching the wood to attach a point, they notched the bone. Maybe because wood was hard to find on the frozen tundra. It was easier to cut a bone point than to shape a tree into a spear. In the warmer regions, like southern and eastern Europe, there were more trees. The bone points from these regions were more traditional. As for hunting, thrusting spear for sure, but they also throw spears. These spear throwers were easier to make, easier to maintain. We found so many spear throwers. Some points were too small for spears. They could have been used for arrows. Evidence for bow and arrow technology has been found in Africa and Asia from earlier periods, and these Aurignacians packed a bunch with them. They had these weird bone tools. Some had holes in them, and people thought they were just decoration. They might have been to straighten out the spear shafts, or making rope. Rope opened a world of possibilities: fishing nets, traps, even clothes. It was all about survival, a cold, brutal world, and the Aurignacians were figuring out how to make it work with whatever they could find, be it stone, bone, or antler. Leatherworking, yeah. They were good at it, these Aurignacians. They had these bone tools, long and smooth, used to work the leather, to make it soft, pliable, and even water-resistant. You can picture them sitting around, rubbing the skins of animals they hunted, turning tough hides into something they could actually wear. They had these little tools for poking holes into the leather, perfect for threading cord through. But the real game changer, eye bone needles. They could thread cord through a tiny hole, stitch clothes that actually kept the cold out. Most likely, Neanderthals didn't have that. They wrapped themselves in loose hides, sure, but it wasn't the same. If you don't have a needle, you don't have a fitted clothes, so there is no real insulation from the cold. But these Aurignacians had the edge. They could make boots, coats, even bags and pockets to carry their tools. We can't know exactly what their clothes looked like, but you can bet they were well made. I'm imagining them hunting in furs, but underneath they had warm and layered clothes, embroidered with symbols that meant something. But who knows? These people were survivors, and their clothes was the part of the story. Life was never typical for Aurignacians. They lived over 30,000 years ago, and no two clans or two tribes did things exactly the same. One group may hunted mammoths in spring, fish in fall. Another group might chase deer herds, with the occasional mammoth to throw in. They adapted to whatever the land gave them, adjusting their tools and ways to survive. When it came to food, they were not picky. They focused on medium and small game. Neanderthals, who came before, went after the big beasts: rhinos, bisons, aurochs, mammoths. But as the world cooled, the landscape changed. Reindeer became the main dish. At some sites, reindeers make up to 90% of the finds. In the mountains, they went after ibex, and in other places, it was deer or boar. And when they hit the jackpot, they took down the herds of horses. A month worth of food for one good hunt. Not to mention the mammoths. Yeah, they hunted them too. Tough job, but the reward is huge. Enough meat, fat, and material to last for ages. It wasn't just about survival. There was a strategy. They trapped smaller animals, such as rabbits or grouse, and they can gather what they could. Women and children might even helped out. Every bit counted, every person counted. They used bone for tools, skins for clothes. They ate shellfish and mussels, whatever the sea offered. Their camps, sometimes caves, sure, but our Aurignacians were mobile people. They had to carry everything. They built temporary homes. I often tell people that the first invention of architecture is roof. People get confused, but when I tell them it's actually a tent that's a roof over your head, it makes more sense. They knew how to stay warm, how to use fire, and how to make life work in the coldest parts of the world. Around the fire, they butchered game, made tools, and crafted jewelry from teeth and bone. Red ochre covered everything. It was art. It was something else. Maybe it was a magical thinking. Who knows? And the predators? These people had their hands full. Cave lions, hyenas, wolves. I want to emphasize the cave bears. They were giants. When they were standing on two legs, they were tall up to 5 meters, and when they are walking on 4 legs, they were at the eye level of humans. You don't want to run into one. Some wolves and dire wolves might get friendly. Early dogs maybe, hunting alongside humans. But they were still wild, who knows? Just picture them, Aurignacians sitting by the fire, wrapped in furs, watching the stars. They lived a tough life, but it was their life, and they knew how to survive. The Aurignacians weren't just cave-dwelling savages. They had something deeper going on, something close to the human heart, culture. They were capable of beauty, tenderness, and the sense of the divine. People used to believe that art and symbolism was made in Europe first. It's not true. You can find art and pigment work in Africa from 100,000 years ago, long before the people settled in places like modern-day France, Spain, and Germany. Even back then, humanity had these seeds of art and symbolism in its soul. Take pigments, for example. You could see them in many Aurignacian sites: red ochre, charcoal, manganese oxide. They used them in ways we might find mundane, but they were essential to them. Maybe it was for the body paint, maybe to keep the bugs off, or worked like sunscreen. But beyond that, I think it was spiritual. Australian tribes today don't slap paint for fun, it's a ritual. Their body painting connects them to their ancestors. Maybe to Aurignacian, ochre meant something deep, a connection to the past, to the earth itself, something beyond survival. When I speak about art, jewelry is another thing that gives you a glimpse into their world. People back then weren't just hunting and sleeping under the stars. They were creating. They were making beads, amulets. They were making it from shells, bones, antlers, even the teeth of predators. Imagine the feeling of having a wolf tooth hanging around your neck. Maybe it gave them courage. Maybe it just made them feel closer to the kill. Some of these beads traveled miles, traded across distances, treasured like gold. They had to mean something. In the Mediterranean, we found shells turned into jewelry, carried hundreds of kilometers inland. There's something beautiful about that. People hauling bits of the oceans and carrying them into the mountains. They drill holes in them, strung them together. It wasn't for nothing. It meant something to them, as the jewelry means something today. They carved them carefully, with a kind of precision that makes you realize how much time and effort went into something so small. The Aurignacians weren't just surviving, they were living. They made art, they made stone tools, wore beads, painted themselves in ochre. This concludes this episode. I want to thank you for joining and listening. I hope I inspired you. I hope you learned something. The music is performed by my friend Sebastian. You can check his band Cadabra. There is a link below. Enjoy the song. Until the next time, goodbye.